Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, back with another Market Watch episode. Today we're going over a few cards that are currently trending on the market because of either current or upcoming meta developments. Obviously the meta is one of the main factors that really affects card prices, especially with modern cards. Now sometimes these things are really obvious, but other times they can just be players speculating about something that's going to happen, or maybe there's a list running around online that just looks interesting or cool, or someone is playing on DB and racking up a lot of wins with an unexpected tech. Either way, we still want to know what those trends are because they might give us an indication as to whether we should be buying or selling particular cards. Let's get started. The first card we have here is Code of Soul. Now this is a card that's probably easy to have overlooked. It's a relatively new super rare from Legacy of Destruction, and it has two relevant effects here. First, if you control a Link monster, you can special summon it from your hand, so it is a free extender. But secondly, during your opponent's main phase, you can banish it from your graveyard to Link summon a Link 3 or higher Cyberse monster. Now it does have another effect, specifically if you play this card in Salamangreat. Not too relevant for the most part since we are primarily looking at this card being used in the Malice strategy. It's not a horrible card to draw because it is a free special summon, but it's also one of the main cards that you want to send to the graveyard directly with Terahertz, since it will allow you to make use of your Malice bodies that you are hopefully bringing back to the field easily when you banish all of them with White Binder. Now this card is just a one of, but I guess Legacy of Destruction is an old enough set to where people don't have this card just lying around anymore, and it's now climbed up to $4 to $5 per copy. Thankfully, this is just a one-of, so you don't need to break the bank if you want to play Malice. This card wasn't worth anything before. I believe it was literally like a 25-cent super, just bulk, definitely unexpected since it doesn't even feel like that old of a card. However, this is definitely something you guys will want to dig up out of your bulk and try to offload for even just a couple of dollars while it is seeing some hype. I do want to take a second to remind all of you to check out our website, MSTmerch.com. Now over at MSTmerch.com, we have everything that you will need to optimize your Yu-Gi-Oh tournament experience. We have the basics with white, black, pink, and our new purple matted sleeves, which are my personal favorites, as well as smooth and matted sleeves to double sleeve your valuable cards and sleeves with for tournament play. But we also have some other items that you can really use to customize your collection. We have amazing foil sleeves, including some with the MST.TV logo, and dividers and subdividers so that you can keep your collection perfectly organized and easily accessible. I'm also super excited to let you guys know that we have our Black Friday sale currently live on the site. That's right, all of your favorite sleeves and accessories are discounted now right through to Black Friday. If you want to try out some sleeves for the first time, now is the perfect time to order them before your next big tournament. Or if you've ordered them before but need to restock, we've got you. Whether you're a casual or competitive player, I'm sure that you'll find something perfect for you over at MSTmerch.com. Next up, we have an interesting card. It's called Enigmaster Packbit. This card is a level 8 synchro monster, but with this one, we're not interested in its on-field effect. Rather, it has an effect that you can activate if it's sent to the graveyard, where you can discard a card and target a monster on your opponent's side of the field and place it in their spell trap zone. Now, one popular side deck option going into next format that a lot of players are looking at is Ultimate Slayer, since you can dump Mereologic Aggregator to shut down a big part of the Ryziel end board. However, players still want to have options for other strategies, and that's where Packbit comes in. This card with Ultimate Slayer lets you deal with two problem cards on your opponent's side of the field. Since your opponent can't respond to Slayer, Packbit just makes it so that Ultimate Slayer actually has more application against the deck, and then you can use Packbit to get rid of Auxilla or whatever other synchro monster they have on the field that they hopefully won't be able to have access to anymore. Now, as far as price goes, Packbit is just starting to trend upwards. This card is historically only a couple of dollars for the secret rare version. They are now up to around $5 each, as the card's only printing is relatively new from Phantom Nightmare. This card does also have a QCR printing. They were around $18 to $20 before. They are up a bit to just under the $30 mark now, which is still a big percentage increase, but not too high overall for a quarter century secret rare. This is a card that I would go ahead and pick up a single copy of the secret rare version for yourself to use. Don't expect it to get too much more expensive in terms of price, since it is a pretty niche application, but it's definitely something that you will want to have access to just in case. On to the next one, it's Lacrima the Crimson Tears. This card is part of the Fiendsmith engine, but it did come out one set later in Rage of the Abyss. This card lets you send a Fiendsmith card from your deck to the graveyard on summon, and then if it's in your graveyard, you can summon a Fiendsmith Link monster from your graveyard back by shuffling this card into the deck. So the Fiendsmith engine has been really interesting recently. Obviously, it was crazy expensive on release, and then we saw the Fusion Lacrima and Beatrice banned and the release of Dominus Impulse, and it seemed like no one really cared too much about the Fiendsmith engine at all anymore. However, at YCS Bologna, we saw Pack, as well as several other high-profile players, do really well with the Fiendsmith Kashtira deck. It was definitely unexpected, but really cool to see because of all the interactions that the deck had, and it actually ran 3 copies of Lacrima using a much larger Fiendsmith engine than what we've otherwise been seeing recently. Because of that, Lacrima has shot up in price over the last week. Historically, despite being a secret rare, this card was only a one of, so we did see it sitting at around $4 to $5 per copy. Now, however, the price has more than doubled as the card is sitting at $12 to $13 on TCG Player, with relatively fewer quantities available. As much as Fiendsmith Kashtira sounds cool, I think its success was a lot due to the surprise factor, as well as the fact that players on it were just really good, so I wouldn't expect to see continued results like this over the next couple of weeks from this deck. The format is changing anyways with the release of crossover breakers, so if you can take advantage of the hype now, I would definitely look to move your copies of Lacrima and buy them back after they've fallen back down. Up next, we have Starleige Photon Blast Dragon. This card is a generic rank 4 Xyz monster, so naturally that does mean it's being used by the Ryzeal deck. This card seems a bit situational, but it's definitely a really safe option. Basically, while it's on the field, your opponent can't target or destroy your monsters with 2,000 or more attack points with card effects. The idea is that you want to make this card before going into Duo Drive, if your hand allows you to, since it protects Duo Drive from cards like Effect Veiler, Infinite Impermanence, and Ghost Ogre, which is really solid protection if you are going first. It is something that gets used in I think all of the OCG lists that I've seen, and it does seem like a really strong card. It just seems to be very dependent on what you expect your opponent to have and what the rest of your hand looks like. Now, in terms of availability, this card isn't too expensive, but it's really annoying to find with its limited printings. It was in one of the Legendary Duelist set, and then I believe it was in Legendary Duelist Season 2 as well. With this one, you have those colored ultra rare versions that really aren't that popular. Those are going to be anywhere from $2 to $5 each, depending on the color. And then with the regular standard ultra rare version, one of those copies is going to be $9, which does make sense. I think those versions look a lot better than the colored ultra rares. The main problem you might have is that players just generally didn't open much of either of those products, so it seems really unlikely that you're going to just find someone at your locals with this card in their trade binders. If you do have them, make sure you add them to your binder before going to your locals, since there's definitely going to be players looking to pick them up once Crossover Breakers drops. This is a pretty cool tech card. It's Chaos Hunter, so against Malice, a lot of players are side decking Artifact Lancia, which is great because it does shut down the deck for an entire turn. Another card that players are considering, however, is Chaos Hunter, because it accomplishes a very similar thing. This card is a level 7 hand trap monster that special summons itself out by discarding a card when your opponent special summons a monster, and while it's on the field, your opponent cannot banish cards. This does have pros and cons compared to Lancia. Obviously, it can last for more than one turn if it does stay on the field, but at the same time, if your opponent does play a way to out the card, then it basically does nothing, whereas Artifact Lancia's effect will linger for the turn. The other thing is that Chaos Hunter only affects your opponent, whereas Lancia affects both players, so Chaos Hunter might be a better tech option if you are playing Malice yourself and still want to be able to banish cards. I don't think that Chaos Hunter is a bad card, but it's definitely going to depend on how the format shapes up and what cards and text players ultimately decide to use before we see whether or not Chaos Hunter is going to be a side deck staple. Fortunately, Chaos Hunter was reprinted in Rarity Collection 2, so most versions of it, even the original Secret Rares from Storm of Ragnarok, are actually quite cheap. It's just the quarter century printing that has spiked. They were down at $5 each, but the card has actually spiked recently and currently sits at $15 each on TCG Player with not very many listings available. With this one, since the card is so unproven and has very notable flaws going into the upcoming format, I'd definitely offload the QCRs if you do have the chance, but make sure that you pick up one of those lower end printings, maybe the secret or collector's rares that are cheap but still look pretty good, just in case you do decide to run this card in your side deck. So here's a card I didn't expect to be seeing for a while. It's Psy-framegear Delta. This card is a pretty interesting side deck hand trap. It lets you summon it to the field along with the Brick Driver to negate a spell card while you control no monsters. This means that most of the time this is something that you're only going to be able to use during your opponent's turn when you are going second, though there might be some other small windows for you to use it during your turn that can come up. The main thing that you're using this for is to hit crossout designator, right? Where let's say you droll your opponent, they cross it out, and then you drop Gamma. They're now still under droll and they are down a couple of cards, making this potentially really devastating. But of course, you can use Delta to hit key engine cards like Bonfire, or you could just hit general cards like Thrust or Talons. Of course, this is a lot weaker than something like Gamma, since Gamma could hit hand traps as well as destroy monsters, right? Whereas most spell cards are going to be sent to the graveyard anyways. However, this card was, I believe, run in Landon Oliver's side deck a couple of YCSs ago, and he won the event with the card there, so that has players thinking that maybe this card is going to be really useful going into the upcoming format. Now, I don't know if this card is going to be that great in Crossover Breakers format. It seems not that great against either Ryziel or Malice. We'll have to wait and kind of see how the format develops. This card used to be a really expensive rare when that was its only printing, but it did get a super rare reprint in OTS Tournament Pack 25. Either the rare or super rare version is going to cost you about $4, with the rare being slightly higher than the super, I guess because that is the original printing. This card was only $1 up until a few weeks ago, so throw this card into your trade binder just in case you do have people looking for it. And finally, the last card we have for today is Super Starslayer Ty-phon Sky Crisis. So this card is one of the most generic Xyz monsters you could possibly run. You can slap it on top of the monster you control with the highest attack points. If your opponent summoned from the extra deck at least twice over the course of this turn and last turn, it stops both players from activating the effects of monsters with 3,000 or more attack points, and you can detach a material from it to non-targeting bounce a monster on the field. Now with this card, I haven't seen tournament results showing this card in the extra deck, but I believe it's being talked about more based on speculation going into next format, maybe based on some online play. This card single-handedly does really well against Ryziel, since you can make it and get rid of your opponent's detonator, and they can't do anything with detonator because of Ty-phon's effect. So this card is really good into a simplified game state. It's pretty cool, but it's definitely going to depend on what deck you're playing. A lot of the time, Malice can't use this card because they're Cyberslocked, and this card has to be the last thing that you summon for the turn. But Ty-phon is a card that will win you a lot of games that you otherwise shouldn't have won, and I think that alone is reason enough to include this in your extra deck, maybe as your 14th or 15th card. Price-wise, this card did just get a reprint in the 2024 tins, and it was one of the few cards that wasn't also in Bonanza from that set. Either the original Ultra or reprint secret version were around $15. However, over the course of the last week, this card has spiked. We have the original Ultras up at $30, while the reprint secrets are up to $25. I think this might be something that we see get reprinted in the Quarter Century Stampede set, so I personally wouldn't want to hold on to too many copies of this card, but one copy probably isn't a bad idea if you want to have it available going into this upcoming format. Alright guys, that is all I have for today's episode. Definitely super excited to see the Crossover Breakers stuff. I'm definitely going to want to pick up Malice. I am just kind of sad because I wanted to get the deck in max rarity eventually, but there are so many QCR printings for that deck and all of the collector's rares. I don't know if I'm going to have the budget for it, but we'll definitely have to wait and see. Anyways, guys, if you did enjoy today's Market Watch, please make sure you let me know by hitting that thumbs up button. Make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time, guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.